Hey everyone, it's the Haunting Hour here. Before we jump into today's video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And if you have any thoughts on the stories in this video, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I always love hearing your feedback. Now, let's get into the terrifying stories. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you all have an awesome day. I've lived in this city for over a decade now, and while I'd heard my share of strange noises through walls and seen more than enough weird street stuff, I've never really been the type to believe in hauntings. Stuff goes bump in the night all the time. You shrug it off, you move on. But this story, what happened to me a few years ago, it still won't let go. I don't think about it every day, but when I do, it hits me hard. Like a chill that settles in places you forget to guard. This was back when I lived alone with my dog, Murphy, in a modest little apartment on the third floor of a fairly average complex. I was the third tenant in that unit in less than 2 years. The landlord just shrugged and said people didn't stick around long. At the time, I thought maybe the walls were thin or the water pressure was bad. Those things usually explain why people leave fast. Looking back now, I know better. Murphy was my companion, my guard, and my alarm system all rolled into one floppy-eared mutt. He wasn't big, but his bark could raise the dead. I encouraged him to bark if someone came to the door, what I called his intruder bark. It wasn't the most neighborly thing, but I was a young woman living alone in a big city. I'd rather my dog warn me than worry about noise complaints, and Murphy only barked when someone actually knocked, never randomly, never at nothing. Until one night he did. I was dead asleep, curled under my comforter, with Murphy curled up at the foot of my bed, where he always slept. I don't know the exact time, but I remember how dark it was, the kind of deep darkness that only shows up around 2 a.m. when the city outside settles into silence. Suddenly, Murphy let out that intruder bark, sharp, alert, not a growl, not a whine, just that piercing, loud, unmistakable bark. I jerked awake, heart already racing. He was on his feet, facing the bedroom door, still barking. But here's the part that froze me. He didn't jump down from the bed like he usually did. He didn't rush to the door. He stayed right next to me, barking. The room was dark, except for a faint orange glow coming from the kitchen nightlight. I stared through the doorway, past the hallway, into the kitchen. I could just make out the fridge, the counter, and the upper cabinets. And then I saw it. Sitting on the counter, crouched low like someone trying to stay hidden, was a shadow. Not a person, not an outline. Just this thick, dense darkness that shouldn't have been there. It didn't move. It didn't flinch. It just sat there, taking up space, blocking the light around it in a way that didn't look possible. It was too still, too sharp. I kept my eyes locked on it and reached for my glasses on the nightstand. My hands shook and I knocked them to the floor. I didn't want to look away. Something in me said, don't look away. But I couldn't see clearly without my glasses. So I started feeling around on the floor, eyes still straining toward the kitchen. I couldn't find them. Finally, I turned my head for just a second, grabbed my glasses and put them on. When I looked back, the shadow was gone. Murphy was still tense, his body low, ears up. He was just staring into the kitchen. I turned on the lamp next to my bed and slipped out from under the covers. I made my way through the hallway, Murphy at my heels. I checked the kitchen. Nothing. The counter was clean. No signs of anyone. Doors and windows were locked. I opened the cabinets, checked the pantry. Nothing. I left the lights on that night, slept on the couch with Murphy curled against me. I didn't get a wink of sleep. At first, I tried to laugh it off the next morning. Maybe I had been dreaming. Maybe the shadow was a coat or a towel or something stupid, but it stuck with me. That stillness, that shape, that feeling in my stomach. And then Murphy started acting strange. Every night after that, around 2 a.m., he would wake up. He wouldn't bark, not always. Sometimes he just stared toward the kitchen, his body stiff, head low. If the door was closed, he'd stare at the door. If it was open, he'd stare into the dark. I tried turning the nightlight off, but he still did it. I tried moving his bed. He still got up at the same time. Sometimes I'd wake up first. without knowing why, and find him sitting there, waiting, watching. It wasn't long before I started to hear things. Taps, like fingers on the wall. Little scratching sounds, always from the kitchen. I'd go in, and nothing would be there. Just once, I found one of my glasses, the drinking kind, sitting perfectly on the floor. Not broken, just there, like someone had placed it gently. Another time, I came home from work and found all the drawers in the kitchen pulled open. Not the cabinets, just the drawers. It wasn't dramatic. It was precise, intentional. One night I woke up to this strange stillness. Not quiet, still, heavy. Murphy was already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, staring. My bedroom door was open just a crack. Through that crack, I could see into the hall, and standing at the end of it, just outside the kitchen, was that shadow. This time, it wasn't crouched. It was standing, and tall. Its head was slightly tilted, like it was thinking, studying, but not hiding anymore, just observing. It stood there, silent, still, blacker than the dark around it. I couldn't see eyes, but I knew it was looking at me. I turned on the light by my bed without thinking. The moment the room lit up, the shadow was gone. But the door to the kitchen, which I always kept closed after that first night, was now wide open. The next day, I took Murphy and stayed with a friend across town. I didn't explain much, just said I needed a break from my place. I wasn't ready to say the word haunted. I ended up breaking my lease early, paid the fees, didn't look back. But before I left, I bought a cheap little security camera, the kind that links to your phone. I set it up in the living room, facing the kitchen, and left it running overnight. I didn't watch the footage. I couldn't. Instead, I gave it to my friend, the same one I stayed with. Asked her to look and tell me if there was anything strange. She called me 2 hours later. She didn't describe everything. She just said one thing. It was standing over your bed for almost an hour. You never moved, not once. And then she blocked my number. I've never seen her again. Now, I live with my boyfriend in a different place. Brighter, busier, more life in the walls. Murphy's older, a little slower, but he still sleeps at my feet every night. We've got other pets now too. Tats, a fish, even a lizard. But I still leave a light on in the kitchen. I've never told my boyfriend why. He thinks it's a quirk. Says I must have been scared of the dark as a kid. And sometimes, when I wake up around 2 a.m., for no reason at all, I find Murphy already awake. Not barking, not moving, just staring at the door. And I swear, sometimes I feel it, like something remembered me, like it's waiting for the right moment, not to scare me, to finish something. The place I left behind, I heard it's vacant again. Tenants don't stay long, but that unit, it's never empty. I still have the ring. I haven't worn it in years, but I've never been able to throw it away. It sits in a cloth bag at the back of a drawer under some cords and receipts I never touch. Every time I think about getting rid of it, something stops me. I tell myself it's just nostalgia or habit, but deep down, I think it's something else. This started when I was 11, maybe 12. I'm 20 now, so it's been a while, but I remember it clearly. Everything from the way the ring looked to how it felt when things started getting strange. My best friend back then was a girl named Leah. We've been inseparable since 2nd grade. Our moms knew each other through PTA meetings, and we did everything together. Sleepovers, field trips, Halloween costumes. We used to say we were each other's forever friend, and at that age, I really believed we would be. Leah lived in a small neighborhood one over from mine, a quiet cul-de-sac with older houses, mostly single-story. It always felt a little darker over there, maybe because of the old trees or the way the streets curved, but I never really thought about it at the time. One afternoon, I came over for a regular hangout. We were sitting in her room, going through her dress-up box and old costume jewelry, when she got this serious look on her face. She pulled a small white box out of her dresser and opened it. Inside was a silver ring, a simple band with tiny diamonds lined all the way around it. It looked like an engagement ring, the kind you'd see in a jeweler's window. She said she'd found it that morning in her jewelry box. She didn't know where it came from. It wasn't hers, and her mom said she'd never seen it before. Her dad wasn't the type to buy random gifts, and her older sister had moved out years ago. Leah said she'd gone through that box countless times before. She was sure it hadn't been there. She didn't sound scared, just confused. I remember thinking maybe it had been left behind by the people who lived in their house before them. Or maybe it was her mom's and she just forgot. But something about it felt out of place. I couldn't put my finger on it. A couple weeks later, Leah came over for a sleepover at my house. It was early summer. Warm enough that we had the window open, but cool enough for a blanket. We had snacks, pillows all over the floor, and a stack of movies ready to go. Leah brought the ring with her. She said she didn't want to leave it at home. I remember asking her why, and she just shrugged. I think she was curious more than anything. We were sitting next to my desk, talking about school and movies. The ring was on the desk in front of us, shining under the lamp. Then, out of nowhere, Leah stopped talking. Her eyes closed and her whole body went still. At first, I thought she was joking. She had a weird sense of humor and used to pretend to faint to freak me out. But this was different. She didn't move, not even a twitch. I said her name once, then again louder. I touched her arm. Nothing. It felt like she was asleep, but her posture was too straight, too frozen. In my kid brain, I thought she was gone for 20 minutes. But looking back, it was probably 5, maybe less. The movie we had playing in the background was still on the same scene. She opened her eyes suddenly, like coming up for air. She looked straight at the desk. Her face went pale. Then she said, "It talked to me." I asked her what she meant. She said she heard a woman's voice while she was out. Not audible, clear in her mind. The voice said the ring had been taken back, but it would return in 1 hour. We looked at the desk. The ring was gone. I started laughing. Nervously at first, then stopped. We searched the room. My desk drawers, under the bed, the pillows, the closet. Nothing. I even checked the trash can, which made no sense, but I was desperate to find it. We eventually gave up and sat on the floor, trying to figure out what had happened. I wasn't scared yet, just confused. I kept thinking Leah must have hidden it as a joke. But if she had, she was committed to the bit, too shaken for it to be fake. After what we guessed was about an hour, we started looking again. This time, we found it. It was in a pencil box inside the bottom drawer of my desk. The box hadn't been opened in months. I used to keep random school supplies in there, but it was mostly empty. The ring was sitting right in the middle of it, between a dried-out highlighter and a stubby eraser. Neither of us could explain how it got there. That night changed everything. We became obsessed with the ring. We wanted to know where it came from, who it belonged to, and why it acted the way it did. It felt like a mystery only we could solve. Leah had this old laptop, and we started searching through local news articles from the past few years. At first, we looked for stories about missing jewelry, but nothing fit. Then we started searching for tragic deaths, women who had died suddenly. Eventually, we found it, an article from about a year before. A woman had been shot in a convenience store parking lot during a robbery. She was an innocent bystander, caught in the crossfire. 26 years old, recently engaged. The article didn't give her full name, and there wasn't a picture, but one line stood out. It said she was wearing a silver band lined with small diamonds, presumed to be an engagement ring. Leah stared at the screen for a long time. Then she said, "I think it's her." I didn't argue. I didn't want to. That night, Leah gave me the ring. She said she felt like it was too close to her, like the voice might come back if she kept it. I took it without thinking too hard. I didn't want to leave her scared. I put it in my jewelry box before bed. The next morning, it was gone. Came back that afternoon, sitting on top of my desk like it had never moved. After that, the disappearances started happening more often. Sometimes the ring would be gone for hours, sometimes days. The longest was 3 weeks. I stopped telling Leah after a while. She seemed to want to move on from it. I don't think she ever wanted it back. One time, it disappeared on a Monday morning. I looked for it obsessively all week. I stopped sleeping. I kept getting up in the middle of the night to check the jewelry box, then my desk, then the floor. It never showed up. I started wondering if it had gone for good. Then that Friday, I came home from school and found it sitting on my pillow. I hadn't put it there. No one had been in my room. I asked my mom, and she said she hadn't touched anything. I stopped talking about it after that. It wasn't just the disappearances. Strange things started happening around the house, too. Little things at first. My door opening in the middle of the night. My desk chair swiveling on its own. The sound of something falling when nothing had moved. One night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the door creaking open. I was positive I'd closed it. I stayed in bed, too scared to move. I felt like someone was watching me. I didn't sleep until the sun came up. The next morning, the ring was on my nightstand. I hadn't put it there. I started keeping it locked in a wooden box with a small key. Then I put that box inside another one. It didn't matter. Whenever the ring wanted to disappear, it would. And it always came back. By the time I was 14, it had started happening less. The disappearances got shorter. Then they stopped. I still checked every few days, just to be sure. Lee and I grew apart naturally. There was no fight. Just different schools, different friend groups. The last time we talked about the ring, she asked if I still had it. I said yes. She didn't ask for details. I think she wanted to forget. But I couldn't, because even after the ring stopped moving, something stayed. I started having dreams. Always the same setting, a hallway I didn't recognize, with faded yellow wallpaper and dark wood floors. At the end of the hall was a bedroom. A woman stood next to a dresser. Looking into a mirror, I never saw her face, but on the dresser was the ring. Sometimes I reached for it in the dream, and that's when I'd wake up. Always cold, always breathless. I never told anyone about the dreams. Not my parents, not my friends, not even my boyfriend now. It felt like something that belonged to me and me alone. And then last year, I found something that shook me. I was going through old files on my computer, trying to clean up storage. When I opened a folder from years ago, it was our old ghost file, where Leah and I saved articles. Inside was a screenshot of that same article about the woman who was shot. But this time, there was a comment attached, something I don't remember writing. It said, she was looking in the mirror when it happened. I don't remember typing that, but it matched the dreams, almost exactly. Now I keep the ring locked in a box at the back of the drawer. I don't touch it, I don't wear it, but every time I open that drawer, I swear I smell lavender. I don't own anything lavender scented, never have. I looked it up once, out of curiosity. It was her favorite scent, the woman from the article. I don't know if it was ever really about the ring. I think it was about who held on to it. And maybe now, it's about who remembers. I still have the ring, and now I think it has me. I never used to believe a brand new building could be haunted. Our office complex is only 10 years old. Clean, modern, 3 floors stacked tightly beside a much older hospital. The walls are white, the floors are vinyl tile, and everything still has that faint smell of new carpet and drywall in some corners. We have electronic badge readers, digital schedules, and LED lights that buzz a little too loud when you're alone. And right behind it, a 100-year-old hospital and a small stone-faced emergency room that's even older than the rest. That part of the property was originally a makeshift clinic during the Depression. I heard that from one of the older nurses, who claimed people used to walk in without names, get treated, and sometimes never walk back out. No records, no history. I always figured if anything around here was haunted, it would be there. The emergency entrance sits behind our office by maybe 50 feet, close enough to see through the windows, but far enough to feel like a different world. I expected that place to hold something, maybe lost spirits, maybe shadows of people who never got to say goodbye. But not us, not this building, not until 6 months ago. It was a Monday morning just before 8 a.m. I was the first one in the office, like usual. I unlocked the suite, started booting up the computers, and walked back to check the coffee pot. It was quiet, too quiet for a place with automated vents and motion lights. I was back at the front desk when the door handle to the lobby rattled. Not just a gentle shake, it jerked, like someone was trying to force it open too fast. It caught my attention right away. I looked up expecting to see a patient come in early, but no one came through. I waited a few seconds, thinking maybe someone had the wrong office, and turned around. Eventually, I stood and walked into the hallway. It's a long stretch of fluorescent lights and neutral walls, with no other suites on our side of the floor. We're the only ones on that hallway. There's no corner to turn, no door to slip into. The hallway was empty. I checked the stairwell door at the end, closed tight. No one had come or gone. The floor was absolutely still. That same rattle happened again less than an hour later. I was behind the front desk. I looked up. No one came in. I stepped into the hallway. Same story. Empty. Too quiet. By the time my first coworker arrived, it had happened a third time. I asked her if she'd heard it. She looked at me weird and said, "Wasn't that you?" It wasn't. Later that morning, around 10 a.m., 3 of us were standing behind the front desk, talking about the weird door situation. I was midway through explaining it when an appointment card lifted from the holder. It didn't slip. It didn't tip. It lifted. It rose an inch, floated in the air for a split second, then flipped and landed right in front of us. We all went quiet. No open windows, no fans, no airflow strong enough to do that. I looked at my coworker. She stared back, eyes wide. Then she asked, "Did that just happen?" I nodded. We tried to laugh it off, said maybe static or air pressure did it. But there was nothing natural about the way it moved. That card had intent. After that day, things started happening more often. Not all at once, just small moments that felt off. It started with voices in the stairwell. I take the stairs most days. The elevator's slow, and the walk does me good. A few weeks after the card incident, I was headed down around 7 a.m. and paused on the landing. I thought I heard someone talking 2 floors down. Just quiet mumbling. A low voice, male maybe. I waited for it to stop, but it never did. It just faded when I moved. When I got to the first floor, the stairwell was empty. This happened a few times. Sometimes a man's voice, sometimes a woman's. Always low, always unintelligible. A few other staff members started reporting it too. One said he heard a conversation and even stopped to wait for someone to appear, but no one came. Then came the footsteps. You'd hear them behind you, only in the stairs. Heavy, deliberate steps. I tried to write them off as echoes from above or below, but the timing was always off. They'd start when I wasn't moving, and they'd stop when I turned around. One day, I was walking down to grab something from the supply closet on the 2nd floor. A nurse came around the corner, looking pale. She asked if I'd just been behind her. I hadn't. I'd come from the opposite direction. She said she'd heard footsteps following her the whole way down, matching her pace, never passing her. The strangest event happened around lunch about a month ago. Most of the staff was in the break room. One coworker had stayed behind to take a personal call up front. When she came back, she looked rattled. She said she was sitting at the front desk, talking quietly, when the lobby TV turned on by itself. Now, this is an old TV, no smart functions, no voice activation. The remote was sitting in a cubby under the desk, and she swears she never touched it. She said the screen came on, flipped through a few channels, then stopped on a news clip. A hospital. Not ours, but one that looked a lot like the one next door. Red brick, older style. The camera zoomed in on the entrance before the TV shut off entirely. We all went to check the remote to see if maybe she hit something by accident. The batteries were dead, completely drained. We replaced them the next day. It never happened again. The office furniture started moving next. Nothing violent, nothing dramatic, just slight shifts. Sometimes an office chair would roll back from a desk without anyone touching it. Slowly, a few inches, sometimes more. I'd seen it happen while walking past the rooms. The coffee table in the lobby moved twice. One time we heard it drag while we were in the back. When we came out, it had been turned at a strange angle. Not like someone bumped it, but like it had been placed that way. The other time, we found it shifted several feet to the left the next morning. Nothing on top of it was out of place. Just the table itself. We started joking about getting a blessing for the office, but the joke stopped being funny after a while. The worst night happened this week. There were storms building all day, heavy summer thunder, dull lightning flashes behind the clouds. The kind of storm that sits over the city for hours without breaking. It was just after 6 p.m. when I finished some paperwork and started getting ready to leave. The others had already left around 5. I was alone. I decided to use the far stairwell, the one on the opposite side of the building. The air felt strange, stiff, like the charge in the air before a storm hits. The hallway lights were on, but they looked a little dimmer than usual. Maybe it was just my eyes, or maybe the storm was affecting the power. I made it 3/4 down the hall when I heard the footsteps. fast, heavy, coming from behind. I turned around, heart hammering. Nothing. The footsteps stopped immediately. I stared down the hallway, empty, still, dead silent. I tried to laugh it off, told myself I was on edge from the weather. But I picked up my pace, got to the stairwell, opened the door, started down. I was just past the second floor when the third floor door slammed open. Loud, hard, metal hitting concrete. I froze. I screamed. I hate that I did, but it just happened. I waited a few seconds, listening. Nothing. I took off running. I was almost to the first floor when the third floor door slammed open again. Louder, harder. I swear I heard footsteps coming fast behind me. Not echoes, not my own. I didn't look back. I hit the first floor exit and didn't stop until I was outside in the pouring rain. Tomorrow I have to go in early. I'm opening for a training. I'll be there before 7 a.m. and I'll be alone for a good 30 minutes. The storms are supposed to roll through again in the morning, and I already know I won't trust the elevator. I'll have to use the stairs. I've started hearing the footsteps at home. I live in an upstairs apartment. No one above me, just the roof. But twice now I've heard footsteps from the ceiling. Slow, heavy steps, moving from the center of the room to the corner, then stopping. I stared at the ceiling both times, never heard them come back. Just that one walk, like someone was patting down the place. I keep thinking about that emergency room, about all the people who died there. People who didn't make it inside, whose names never got written down, who never got a goodbye. What if they wandered? What if something in them moved on, but something else stayed behind? What if that something is looking for new places to settle? I used to think the haunting belonged to that old building, to the past, to the hospital. But now I hear the footsteps in my ceiling. Tomorrow morning, I'll open the stairwell door again, and I don't think I'll be walking out alone. This all started when I was around 18. I'm in my late 20s now, but I still don't feel like I've gotten away from it. I've moved, changed names online, cut connections. And yet, every once in a while, something slips through. A reminder that I'm not as invisible as I think I am. I want to make something clear before I tell you the rest. I have schizophrenia. I was diagnosed when I was 19. After years of struggling with thoughts I couldn't explain and fears I couldn't prove. But I got help. I spent years in the city getting treatment, therapy, medication, structure, all of it. I think stable for a long time. I know what hallucinations feel like. This wasn't one of them. Back when I was 18, I hung around a loose group of guys, most of them a couple years younger than me. I'd met them through a friend who was still in high school. We'd hang out, smoke some weed, play games, listen to music. They were the kind of friends who would come around whenever someone had a few hours to kill. Nothing deep, nothing lasting. That's where I met Ryan. He was maybe 16 back then, kind of offbeat. A little too interested in where people lived, what they were doing, what accounts they had online. But he didn't seem dangerous, just awkward. When I moved to the other side of town, I thought that was the end of it, but they found me again. One afternoon, a couple of them showed up outside my new place. They said they'd heard from someone where I moved and thought it would be cool to drop by. Ryan was with them. They hung out for an hour or two, then left. I remember thinking it was a little strange that they'd gone to that much trouble to track me down, but I brushed it off. By that time, though, my mental health was unraveling. I was starting to slip into paranoia, hearing things I knew weren't real, feeling like I was being watched even when I was alone. Shortly after that, I got into some trouble. Nothing violent, just erratic, disorderly. I decided to get help before it got worse. I left for the city and stayed for almost 6 years. When I came back, everything had changed, except for the internet. That was still there, still familiar. I started gaming again. It was one of the only ways I could be social without getting overwhelmed. And that's when Ryan found me again. It started small. I met some random player who recognized one of my old usernames. He mentioned knowing a guy from years back, someone who used to hang out with the group I used to be around. Apparently, Ryan had been gifted an old gaming account that used to belong to one of those guys. A day later, I got a Facebook message from Ryan. He asked about games, about what I'd been up to, about my life. I kept it short. He wasn't hostile, just oddly enthusiastic. He told me he'd been trying to buy gold and cosmetics in a game, but didn't know how to use prepaid cards. He asked if I could help, so I did, once. I walked him through the process, how to enter the card number, where to put the billing zip code, which button to press. But then he asked again and again. Soon, he was sending messages every week, then every night, then every hour. My phone started buzzing all night long. I'd wake up to 20, sometimes 30 messages from him. Always stuff like, "Hey, card's not working," or "Can you check this for me?" or "Hello? What?" When I didn't answer, he didn't stop. He just kept messaging. After a few weeks of this, I started getting physically sick. My body was on edge constantly. I lost sleep. I felt like my phone was buzzing even when it wasn't. I'd hear phantom notifications and check to find nothing, or worse, just him. I finally snapped, told him to stop, blocked him on Facebook. A few months later, I logged into an old Facebook account I hadn't touched in years. The inbox was full of messages from Ryan. Every 1 to 2 months, for 3 straight years, he'd sent me a message. Sometimes just, "Hey," sometimes a photo, sometimes a link to a game I used to play. Always from his side, never answered. That shook me more than the constant messaging had. It meant that even after I ghosted him, even after I blocked him, he kept looking for a way to reach me. After that, I made a point to keep everything private. New phone, new accounts, new location. I moved to an apartment complex on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but quiet enough. I kept to myself. My computer was set up near a window that overlooked the courtyard. Most nights, I'd game with the blinds half open, just to let in the streetlight. Never occurred to me that anyone would be looking in. Then, one night, I heard shouting outside. I opened the door and saw a few neighbors gathered around a woman who had just moved in next door. She looked shaken, barefoot, clutching her phone, talking fast. She said she'd seen someone watching her through her window. A man, tall, wearing a hood. One of the other tenants had tried to chase him down, but he disappeared into the side streets. That was her first night living there. A week later, my apartment deadlock broke. Not like it got jammed, not like it got old. The internal bolt had snapped. The metal looked bent, almost like it had been tampered with from the outside. Maintenance said it was odd. They didn't say dangerous, just odd. I started putting the pieces together. I'd been sitting at that window every night for months, never thinking about who might be watching. Maybe Ryan had found me again. Maybe he'd been looking through my window all that time and I never noticed. Maybe when the new tenant moved in next door, he shifted his attention to her. Something about that fit too well to ignore. I moved again. New building, safer area, higher floor. I locked out every account, changed usernames, logins, even stopped talking on voice chat. I told myself I was done with Ryan. 2 years passed. Then I saw him again. I logged into an old game under an alt account. I hadn't touched it in years. Within minutes, someone sent me a friend request. The name was a slight variation on my original username, just a couple letters off. The character looked exactly like mine. Same outfit, same deer, same pet following him. He sent a message, "Nice alt, thought you quit." My heart dropped. Only a few people knew that username. Fewer still knew my character's exact layout, and only one person would ever have gone to that much trouble. I logged off without replying. Later, I reached out to a few old gaming friends, just casually. I asked if they'd seen that account around. They said yes. Some of them even thought it was me. He'd been joining lobbies I used to frequent, dressing like me, talking like me, using the same pet phrases I did. He wasn't just copying me, he was becoming me. I don't play much anymore. When I do, it's under new names behind a VPN, using randomized accounts. But every once in a while, someone sends me a friend request from an account that looks just a little too familiar. And sometimes, people I've known for years will ask, "Hey, didn't I see you online yesterday?" But I wasn't online, and they're never talking about me. The final straw came 3 months ago. I was at a small grocery store near my place, the kind of corner shop that doesn't even take cards half the time. I was waiting in line, half asleep, when I looked up and saw someone at the end of the aisle. Tall, hooded, just standing, not looking at anything, just facing my direction. I didn't recognize the face, couldn't even see it clearly, but something in me knew. I turned around, walked out without buying anything, spent the night at a friend's. I haven't been back since. I don't know how he keeps finding me. I don't know if it's still Ryan or someone else entirely. Maybe he passed my info to someone else. Maybe I'm just paranoid again. But I've been stable for years. I'm on my medication. I see my therapist every month. I know what's real, and this is real. I've started treating my online presence like a crime scene. No personal info, no photos, no old usernames. I even run background checks on myself to make sure nothing slipped through. But it never feels like enough, because he doesn't have to message me anymore. He doesn't have to chase me or stand outside my window. Now he just waits. He lives in the games I used to play, in the accounts I once logged into, in the way I wrote, the words I used. He sits just on the edge of my social circles, close enough to be familiar, far enough to avoid being caught. He has my name, my style, my voice, and every time someone thinks they're talking to me, I wonder if they are, or if they're talking to him. When I was 11 years old, my dad made me go outside every night to shut off the generator, and I think that's when something noticed me. We live off-grid, tucked deep into a quiet stretch of woods in a part of the country most people would call nowhere. We've got no streetlights, no power lines, and no neighbors close enough to hear you yell. Just old houses, patched together fences, and a dirt road that goes quiet after sundown. When the sun goes down out here, it's dark, not city dark, real dark. The kind of dark where your flashlight barely cuts a hole in the black. The kind where you start imagining things in the tree line. And maybe sometimes you don't have to imagine. Back then, we didn't have enough solar to keep our house running overnight, so we had a generator in the old shop at the edge of our yard. A big metal thing that rumbled and roared all evening long. Once it got late, it was my job to shut it off. I hated that chore, not because I was lazy. I just didn't like being outside alone in the dark. There was something about our land that always made my skin crawl at night. Even in the daylight, the place felt heavy sometimes, like the trees themselves were holding secrets. But the dark, that was worse. That was when the quiet set in too deep, and the woods didn't feel empty anymore. At the time, I was just a scared kid with a flashlight and a bad feeling. But looking back, I think it started long before that. Maybe it started with our neighbor. We'll call him D. D lived at the far end of our dirt road, in a sleek, modern house that stuck out like a sore thumb. It had big glass windows, solar panels, and enough cameras to make a drug cartel jealous. The house looked like it belonged in some tech magazine, not buried in the woods surrounded by trailers and patched up cabins. D didn't fit in, but he made himself comfortable. He walked the road barefoot, humming to himself and playing a ukulele. He dressed in long robes, wore crystal necklaces, and had the kind of stare that made you feel like you were being sized up for something not good. At first, I thought he was just eccentric. My family isn't exactly normal either. We've always had our own ideas about the world. Lizard people, secret bunkers, spiritual energy, that sort of thing. But even my dad, who'll sit for hours talking about how the moon landing was faked, seemed uneasy around D. Still, he kept showing up, inviting us over, asking weird questions. Things like, do you feel watched at night? Have you noticed any gaps in your memory? Do animals act strange around you? He'd smile when he asked, like he already knew the answers. At first, my dad brushed it off, but then something changed. He started going over to Dee's house more often, helping him build strange little rock formations in the woods, meditating, talking less at home, being different. I asked him once if Dee had said something to him. He just said, he sees the world clearly. I didn't like that answer, and I didn't like the way Dee looked at me whenever we crossed paths. His head would tilt, not like a person, more like a bird or a reptile, sharp and sudden. His eyes didn't blink the way they should have. And when he smiled, it never touched his face. He creeped me out, plain and simple. Now let me tell you about the first night I saw it. It was around 9 p.m., early fall, and the sky had gone black fast. I stepped out onto our porch, flashlight in hand, the generator humming faintly in the distance. There was that usual pit in my stomach, that you're not alone out here feeling. But this time, it was stronger. I didn't move right away. Something in the air felt off, like the night itself was watching me, and that's when I saw it. To my left, halfway down our gravel driveway, stood a figure, average height, slender, motionless. Its eyes glowed green, not brightly, just enough to stand out against the black, like two dots of reflected light. But they weren't moving, weren't blinking, just staring. I froze. My flashlight stayed at my side. My legs locked up. Every instinct told me to run, but I knew if I turned around, I'd lose sight of it, and I couldn't let that happen. I don't know why, but something told me that turning my back would be the worst thing I could do. So I backed up, slow and careful, and flipped back inside. I begged my dad to come look. He sighed, rolled his eyes, called me dramatic. But eventually, he followed me out. Nothing. The driveway was empty. He told me it was a deer, maybe a fox. Their eyes glow sometimes, he said, but there was something in his voice, some hesitation that told me he didn't believe it either. Still, he made me do the chore. I sprinted through the dark, flipped the switch, and ran back faster than I thought I could move. The whole time, I felt something just beyond my light's edge, watching. The second time was worse. Same routine, same darkness, same heavy air. But this time, it was closer, standing just off the porch, barely 6 feet from the steps, right where the floodlight should have lit the ground, but somehow didn't, like the light bent around it. Same green eyes, same human shape, but now I could hear something, breathing, not ragged, not loud, just steady, measured breaths, like it was calm, like it had all the time in the world. I lifted my flashlight and turned it on. Nothing. Like it wasn't real, or like it didn't want to be real under the light. I ran back inside again. This time my dad came out faster. He walked the yard, looked around, said nothing. But that night, he didn't argue when I asked to keep the porch light on all night. The third time was the last, and the worst. It was late October, and the moon was full, bright enough to light up most of the yard. I stepped outside and immediately saw it, across the road this time. Between our garage and the old fixer-upper house next door, it stood dead center in the open, fully visible in the moonlight. Same height, same build, but now I could see it wasn't wearing robes or rags. It was wearing pants, and they moved. The fabric shifted in the breeze. Its chest rose and fell with slow, deliberate breaths. Its shoulders lifted slightly, as if it had been waiting for me. And for the first time, I felt something new. Anger. I'd had enough. I stood tall, heart racing, and shouted across the yard, "You're not welcome here. Get off our land." My voice cracked, but I meant every word. I said it again, louder. "Leave. Go back where you came from. Don't come back." And it ran, not shuffled, not floated, not disappeared. Turned, its limbs moving like a person's, and sprinted into the woods. I heard the pant legs swish. I saw the direction it went, toward Dee's house. That was the last time I ever saw it. But I haven't stopped thinking about it, especially after what happened next. A few days later, Dee came walking past our house, ukulele in hand. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just glanced up at me on the porch and said, "Funny how brave kids get when the moon's full." Then he kept walking. My blood turned cold. He never mentioned that night, never said another word about it. But I stopped seeing him after that. Stopped seeing the glowing eyes, too. The road got quieter. Too quiet. My dad never talks about Dee anymore. If I bring him up, he changes the subject. Says he moved. Says he wasn't right. But he won't look me in the eyes when he says it. And Dee's house? It's still there. Still lit at night. But no one comes or goes. Sometimes I think I see shapes in the windows. Just tall, narrow outlines that vanish when you look too long. I've done the research. Green and red eyes in the dark usually mean predators. Cats, owls, sometimes deer. But not when they're 6 feet tall. Not when they move like that. And no, contacts don't glow in the dark. Flashlights don't make people disappear. Breath doesn't echo unless you're close. I know what I saw, and I know who I think it was. These days, I don't go outside at night. We've got enough solar now. The generator sits idle most of the time, but I still keep the porch light on. I still glance down the driveway every night before bed, and I still hear it sometimes. Soft, steady breathing just outside the window, like something remembering its shape, like something waiting to be seen again. So call me crazy, call me paranoid, Call me whatever you want, but I'll tell you this. If someone walks past your house barefoot in a robe, playing a ukulele, and asking about your dreams, don't answer. Don't invite them in. And whatever you do, don't look them in the eyes during a full moon. There's a house my family owns, deep in a valley. It was built on top of a graveyard. I saw ghosts there before I even knew what a ghost was. I was just a kid when I first visited, maybe 6 or 7, but that place never felt right. The road to get there is long and unpaved, surrounded by trees that don't move with the wind. They just stand there, stiff and brittle, like they've been watching the same dirt road for too long. The closer you get, the heavier the air becomes. You feel it in your chest, like something is trying to keep you out, or maybe warn you. The house is old, not in a charming, historic kind of way. I mean old, like forgotten. It was thrown together decades ago, and it shows. Only parts of it are complete. There's a kitchen, 2 bathrooms, a couple bedrooms with roofs, but the rest? It's just concrete, open space, half walls, gaps in the ceiling. There are no real doors, and anyone could just walk in, or anything. The family only uses it during gatherings or special visits, but even then, nobody sleeps alone. Nobody stays up late, and no one goes wandering after dark. I grew up hearing whispers about the valley. The adults called it a place with history, but they never said what that meant. All I knew as a kid was that strange things happened there, and when they happened, no one acted surprised. If someone in the village gets sick, people don't talk about viruses or stress. The first assumption is always the same: possession. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, literally. They believe it because they've seen it. I used to think that was just how remote villages were. Old traditions, old fears. But now I know better. Now I understand what they were really hiding. Because the scariest thing about that place isn't the ghosts, it's the people. There's a room directly across from the kitchen. The floor between them is cracked concrete. And that space has been used for everything: eating, sitting, even sleeping when guests came over. But that room, it's not just cold, it's wrong. There's a chair facing an old television. If you stay up past 9 p.m., sometimes she shows up. An old woman, hair pinned back, wrinkled skin. She just sits there, eyes fixed on the static screen. She never moves. She never speaks. I saw her when I was about 7. I thought she was a guest, so I said hello. She didn't answer. Later, when I asked my aunt who she was, she went pale and said, "Don't talk to her. Just stay out of that room after dark." She said it like a warning, like she wasn't talking about a person at all. There were other figures too. One was a woman with thick, rope-like hair who appeared near the rear walls, always out of reach. Another old woman stayed near the bathroom. She'd sit in a collapsing wooden chair and look at nothing. Both of them always showed up in the same places. We never knew who they were. No one claimed them. No one questioned them. That was the creepiest part. Everyone just accepted it, like they were part of the house, like plumbing or light fixtures. One night I was outside with a few cousins in the open concrete space between the bedrooms. It's kind of like a cement courtyard surrounded by unfinished walls. We were joking around when we heard the TV turn on. We ran inside. The volume was going up and down, back and forth. We thought someone was playing with the remote, but there was no one in the room. My mom came in right behind us. She looked frozen. She told us she'd just seen a child walking into the room from behind the bedroom wall. A little boy. He was turning the knobs on the old television. Then he vanished. She won't talk about it to this day. Another time, my aunts had just finished cleaning the kitchen. They stepped out into the courtyard for some air. That's when they saw it. A creature, not quite human, descended from a large tree hanging over the kitchen wall. Its skin was black, but not like a person's. More like burnt wood, ashy, uneven. It moved awkwardly, dragging one foot behind it, limping. Then it passed through the closed kitchen window, glass intact, no opening. It was just inside. It stayed for less than a minute. Then it vanished. When they re-entered the kitchen, it was wrecked. Dishes broken, cabinets flung open. Salt poured across the counter. They didn't clean it again for days. The animals in that place weren't normal either. Snakes and geckos would appear randomly, sometimes one at a time, sometimes more. And the cats, God, the cats were strange. One of them, black with white spots, acted like it wasn't even a cat. They called it Nuno. It never meowed. It ate puffed corn and drank juice. It used the toilet. I don't mean a litter box. I mean the actual toilet. It would climb up, balance on the seat, do its business, and hop off like a person. That cat never left my grandparents' bedroom. It just watched and waited. But the worst was the voices. They didn't call out loud. They whispered. They said your name in the dark, right behind your ear. Not like a shout or a moan. Like a person. Calm, direct. They even knew nicknames. One morning around 4 a.m., when my mom was a teenager, she went to wake a family member who used to drive kids to school. She knocked on his bedroom door, still half asleep, and then she heard it, a woman's voice behind her. "What do you want? People are sleeping." She turned around. No one was there. She ran home crying. Even now, she won't pass that bedroom alone. Sometimes when things got too quiet, we'd hear the pebbles, little stones being thrown at our feet or at the concrete wall. They didn't hurt. They were a warning, a message. You should leave. For years, these things happened without explanation. People pretended it was normal. But there were always whispers, hushed conversations during dinner, side eyes when certain names came up. Witchcraft. People said some families practiced it in secret. Not for protection, not for tradition, for harm. They could make you sick, mess with your head, even kill. I thought it was nonsense until I learned who they were talking about. My grandmother and her eldest son. It was real, and it was passed down like inheritance. They didn't use wands or spells. They used blood, bones, names. They sacrificed animals, drew symbols, took small pieces of people, hair, nails, clothing, and they hurt others, not strangers, their own. My grandfather died young. We thought it was a heart condition. Now, I'm not so sure. There were rumors about dreams he had before he passed. Things he said he saw in the house. Things he said were watching him sleep. He begged to move away before he died. He said the walls were whispering. Years later, my uncle had a mental break. Out of nowhere, he went from normal to paranoid overnight. Said his dreams were filled with shadows. Said someone was sending things after him. Then he vanished for 3 days. Came back mute. He never spoke again. We believe he was cursed, and we think we know by who. The valley keeps secrets, but it also keeps score. The land doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. We stopped visiting 8 years ago. My parents found religion. They started protecting the house with prayers, oils, holy symbols. We don't say the names of certain relatives anymore. We don't mention the house, but it's still there, and so are they. The shadows, the voices, the watchers. The village has changed. There are fewer animals, fewer children playing outside. People speak even less now. Some houses are abandoned. But that house, the one built over a graveyard, it still stands, waiting. I've had dreams. In one, I'm back there, standing in the open courtyard. The old woman is in her chair. The TV turns on. The black cat stares from the doorway. In another, I hear my name whispered over and over. I try to leave, but my feet are rooted to the ground, like the land owns me. Sometimes I wake up crying. Sometimes I wake up still hearing the voice. But the scariest part, something followed us. I felt it. Small things at first. Shadows where there shouldn't be. Footsteps in the hallway. A chill in the room when no windows are open. Then worse things. Objects moving. Whispers behind the wall. And dreams that leave bruises. We found spiritual help. Prayers. Cleansings. Most of it stopped, but not all of it. Because some things don't leave. They just change form. The final piece clicked into place 2 years ago. That's when I overheard something I wasn't meant to hear. My grandmother talking to someone on the phone. She said, "They'll come back eventually. The house knows." That wasn't a hope. It was a promise. I've spoken to others since then. People from nearby villages. People who felt it too. Who've seen the watchers. heard the voices, experienced the strange silences. It's not just us. It's there. It's spreading. So if you're still reading, do me a favor. Say a prayer. For the dead, for the living, and for the ones in between. Because not every curse ends with the grave. Some start under it. And the land never forgets. I used to own a doll that smiled while I slept, but one day I found it hanging by the neck, swinging gently, as if someone had just walked away. I never told anyone that part before, not even my mom. She saw the aftermath, of course. She saw the things that happened, even if she didn't want to admit it out loud. But there was a difference between seeing something you can't explain and living with it. I was the one who lived with it. The house I grew up in wasn't special. Not to anyone else. Just a single-story home with faded yellow paint and a creaky porch. I lived there with my mom and my grandma. We didn't have much, but I never thought of us as poor. The house was filled with love. At least it was, until things started watching us back. This started when I was around 5 or 6, old enough to play alone, but still young enough to believe that toys were just toys. I had a black Raggedy Ann doll named Annie. She was about the size of my torso, with soft cloth limbs and yarn hair tied into 2 braids. She wore a red and white dress and a bonnet that framed her stitched smile. I loved her. She slept beside me every night. I dressed her in baby clothes, fed her invisible meals, and played house in every room of that creaky old home. One afternoon, I built a play fort in the living room using bedsheets, jumbo books, and a little chalkboard. I even strung a cord from one wall to the other to make a pretend clothesline. I hung Annie's dresses from it, pretending they were drying in the sun. When my mom called me to the kitchen, I hung Annie on the cord too, just by her waist, like a hammock. I bent her forward so her hands touched her feet and left her gently swaying. 5 minutes. That's how long I was gone. When I came back, Annie was hanging by her neck. Not caught, not tangled, tied. She faced the doorway where I stood, her black button eyes aimed straight at me, swinging slowly like someone had just given her a push. Her arms hung limp. Her bonnet was twisted sideways. I stared. Then I ran. My mom said maybe the doll slipped. But even as a kid, I knew better. There's no way her whole body could have rotated and folded like that without help. And it was just me and my mom in the house. My grandma was out that day. After that, I didn't hang her on the line anymore. I didn't stop playing with her though. Kids are funny like that. We get scared, but we forgive easily. But the fear didn't go away, not really. A few years passed and I outgrew Annie. By then, it was all about Barbies. I had Barbie and Ken, some clothes, and one folding plastic closet I carried everywhere. I played a lot in my mom's room, usually while she was watching her shows or folding laundry. One day, I was lying on her bed, letting Barbie and Ken dance together on the blanket. I had them mid-spin when Barbie slipped from my hand and tumbled off the edge. Before she hit the floor, Ken's plastic arm lifted, and caught her. I swear to God, he caught her, not fell beside her, not bounced into her. He caught her mid-drop, like a reflex. I blinked. My mom was watching. We both just stared for a second. Then she stood up. I saw that, she said. We didn't talk about it again. Not then. But I left the dolls on the bed and slept with the lights on that night. It got worse after that. Sometimes I'd wake up in the morning and find my tea set arranged perfectly in the middle of the living room floor. Cups filled with nothing. Tiny plates set for guests who never arrived. Other times, I'd hear faint music coming from the dollhouse upstairs, even though the batteries had been taken out weeks earlier. And then came the dreams. At first, they were just shadows, empty streets, voices I couldn't place. But then she appeared, a ballerina doll, red tangled hair, pink tutu, eyes like glass buttons, too wide, too unblinking. She had sharp, jagged teeth, and she was always chasing me. She didn't walk, she ran, arms stiff at her sides, legs twitching unnaturally, and she always had a knife. In the first few dreams, she chased me through places I recognized, our backyard, the school playground, my grandma's hallway, but over time the locations blurred. became darker, less real. In one dream, I hid under my mom's bed. I saw her pink ballet slippers stop inches from my face. In another, she climbed up the foot of my real-life bed. I woke up screaming that time. After one nightmare, I woke up with nail marks on my arms, small ones, like from a toy hand. I told my mom everything about the ballerina doll, the red hair, the pink tutu, the knife. She said it was just a dream, but she looked nervous. She didn't ask me what the doll looked like. She didn't have to, because when I said pink tutu, she glanced toward the hallway closet, like she already knew. I started sleeping in my mom's room more often. She let me, even though she used to insist I stay in my own bed. One night, I heard her whispering to my grandmother through the wall. I couldn't hear every word, but I remember one line clearly. She's starting to see her now. They don't know who she meant, but I think I do. Eventually, I moved on from dolls. My mom packed them away without saying much. She stored them in a bin in the attic, and we didn't talk about them again. For a while, things were quiet, until they weren't. The attic always had a strange pull. I hated going up there, but sometimes I'd hear faint scraping sounds above my bedroom ceiling. Once, I swear I heard footsteps. Then one morning, I woke up to find Annie, my old Raggedy Ann doll, sitting at the foot of my bed. I hadn't seen her in years. I ran to my mom, who rushed up to the attic and found the storage bin still sealed. Annie wasn't missing. There were two of her. We got rid of that second doll. My mom burned in the backyard fire pit. Neither of us said a word while it burned. Years passed. We moved out of the house after my grandmother died. My mom decided it was time to sell, and I came home to help clean the attic. That's when we found the bin again. She opened it and froze. There was Annie smiling up at us from under a pile of doll clothes. And beneath her, the ballerina. The same wild red hair, the same pink tutu. And this time, I noticed something new. Her head turned slightly, just enough to catch the light. Her glassy eyes were scratched, but she was smiling. Her teeth had changed. They were sharper, wider, like she had grown into the nightmare. I never bought that one, my mom whispered. What? I asked. She shook her head. That ballerina. I don't remember ever buying her. Then she reached out, picked it up, and said quietly, "She's back." My blood ran cold. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing faint tapping from the attic, like fingers against plastic. And then something else. Music. Not from the TV, from upstairs. A slow, broken music box tune. I sat in the living room, lights off, knees pulled to my chest. My mom joined me 15 minutes later, looking just as pale. "You hear it too?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't look surprised. We sold the house 2 weeks later. But the dolls? We left them in the attic. We didn't warn the new owners. I think we were too afraid. Now I live in a quiet apartment. I keep it clean. No dolls, no toys, nothing with a face. But sometimes I'll dream again, always the same. And back in the old house, the rooms are darker, longer, quieter. And I'm not alone. I hear the tap of plastic feet, the scrape of a toy knife across wood. She never speaks. She never has to, because I know why she's there. She's waiting. Last month, I woke up to find 3 small scratch marks across my forearm. I don't own any pets. Here's the thing. When we're little, we give life to our toys. We talk to them. We imagine they listen. But sometimes, something else listens too. And when you believe hard enough, something might come through. Something might stay. I used to think it was just me, that I had an overactive imagination, that I needed therapy, that maybe I inherited something strange from my grandmother. But then I started hearing other stories. Stories about dolls found in places they weren't left. About dreams that bleed into waking life. About families who never speak of certain attic boxes. And it hit me. It wasn't my imagination that gave her life. It was hers. She just needed a face, and I gave her mine.